One of my partners is here in the room, and other than my wife, my two business partners know how true this is. If there's a resume that we carry and share, it often lists much of the story that we know and probably has value, but it's not the one that we really care about. I think on some other level, there's another resume, and it's not the one we have crafted. It's not the one that we're lucky enough to have been born into. It's the one that we have no idea how it's going to be pulled off. As a father of a 10 and a 7-year-old, I don't know shit. I mean, the real simple truth is, every day of my life, I'm reminded how little I know, and I'm constantly not just being told by them, but down deep, somewhere inside, I know I have no idea how it's meant to play out. I don't know how much of it my advice, my reaction, my wanting, or my I don't know is going to be useful to them. At best, I don't know. On a really good day, the second two Post-it notes play a role. I'm really curious where she's going to go next. I'm really struck with, try it when my son makes that move, right? At best, I'm madly curious about what they're going to do next. As an educator, it took me a while to realize how important this relationship was to the students and the families and colleagues who entrusted their best with that 52-minute period, an entire school year, mentoring that went well beyond graduation. Early on, I thought I had to crumple that first Post-it note up. I had to prove that I knew the answer, the subtext, the narrative arc, how to grammatically make sense and splice, how to position yourself, how to argue well, how to be rhetorically sound, how to be more right than you. As a designer, especially one who wasn't trained to be a designer, I don't have chops, I don't have training in that sense, except that I was really curious what it meant to create an environment so that we could be curious together, so that we could learn together, so we could not know together along the way, and hopefully thrive. And I think what's been important for me today as I've listened and not been caught up in my own headspace is how many of us have just decided it's time to create the conditions so that we may thrive. By any means necessary. It might be tactical, it might be technical, it might be technological, it might be a fucking leap of faith. But on some fundamental level, if we may create the conditions so that we may thrive, that's the game I want to be in. That's the relationship I want to be part of. So I want to share with you this beyond maybe a metaphor for, as a parent, as an educator, as a designer, and really use it as a way forward. So the last couple of weeks, I found myself going down the rabbit hole of the internet and the world of videos, and have been captivated by 4 in particular that I loved at first blush. Sometimes I thought I knew why. And it was the 3rd or the 15th, or sometimes embarrassingly far more than just 15 viewings. So one of them talks about going out there. It doesn't talk about it, it shows us. The second one is a high school stage, very much like this. The third video is a stage like this, but maybe a little bit more Carnegie Hall or Wolf Trap than the high school stage, and somebody with a comedic eye towards something we know very well, and we got to decide which side of the fulcrum we sit on. And the final one is a gravel road in the forest of Nova Scotia, and a couple of kiddos that I'll introduce to you, not once, but twice today. With that said, this is what I don't know about and what I'm madly curious about. If you were paying attention to the world in the last week, 2 weeks, Elon Musk blew through whatever assumptions we have. Solar City, driverless cars, the ability to launch a startup, small stakes. It's not if we go to Mars. He's sort of rushed the calculus on that one. It's a matter of a pricing point now. Is it a $20 billion per person expedition? Or is it a matter of the cost of a $200,000 home? Because for Elon, it isn't, will we get to Mars? It's not, can I get another startup to go up? It's, can we get the price point from $20 billion to $200,000 per person, inconceivable to the cost of your first home? That's crazy business. But what I love about it is it's just a pricing point, right? Like, if you really sift through, it's not, I don't know how to do it. It's just a matter, we just got to get the accounting right. Like, it's pretty cool. So the second one is a little bit more grounded. If you read the Boston Globe in the last couple of days, really one of those wonderful articles, you're like, I don't know how somebody managed to be paid to write this article, because where's the there? But you're like, this is exactly the kind of news we need. It was about the rising trend of middle school students in affluent Boston communities and suburbs. It didn't explicitly say that, but they didn't look at Dorchester. They did look at a lot of the independent school communities outside of Boston, and added Newton just to spike the punch. And this idea of what is it with a sixth grade boy? Now, this is a high school senior who understood the implications of this and crushed it at 5.7 million views on YouTube to date, which is less than the 2-year-old who flipped it like 14 times in a row and has 7.5 million views and doesn't care about the implications or social impact or brand elements. What is it about sixth grade boys that can't stop flipping the cup? Better part of the story, what is it about the parents who are driven crazy by that? Quite literally, much like Eon, it looks like we're going to Mars. The world is a catastrophe. It's not about shared consciousness. When really what the narrative sort of crux is how do we just make it the cost of a first home so that we can get on with the real work we must do? At first blush, stop it. Put the bottle down. Why did you pour half of it out first? I love the not knowing what the real design problem is of that. Is it to get a kid to stop, hush, sit still? Because hatch can't happen. Unusual can't happen if that kid grows up. She doesn't want to sit in these chairs. We can't roll out new products, new initiatives, new processes if the goal is to not pour half the bottle out. As a designer, as a parent, as an educator, I'm really struck by the productive tension there. It is just a flipped bottle, but it's as big as Pokemon Go is right now and doesn't cost a damn thing, right? And we're not trying to digitize childhood. In fact, it's an antidote to digitizing childhood. And we're telling kids to stop it, put it away, because you're driving me fucking crazy, right? Because at the end of the day, the story isn't about the kid flipping the bottle despite his homies going crazy at the talent show. The art is the parent reacting. Proverbial parent and his literal parents. The next moment you might be familiar with is somebody who's trying to wrestle with that.
Why can't we go outside? Well, because it's raining. Why? Well, water's coming out of the sky. Why? Because it was in a cloud. Why? Well, clouds form when there's vapor. Why? I don't know. I don't know any more things. Those are all the things I know. Why? Because I'm stupid, okay? I'm stupid. Why? Well, because I didn't pay attention in school, okay? I went to school, but I didn't listen in class. Why? Some things are and some things are not. What?
So it's funny on a lot of levels, and if you have kids, particularly funny. And on some level, he nails it. Louis C.K., it's why he is a cultural phenomenon, because he understands, like George Carlin and other people, that we find the uncommon in the common, right? To go back to the poetry that brought us here. He nails it. And we laugh because the kids are a bit of a pain in the backside. And that 14th question isn't adorable anymore. And where the fulcrum shifts is when he's us in this case, we shift from, well, because, to the, well, I can't believe I just said that out loud, but I'm still playing along, we're still teammates in this, to the, I have to admit that I don't know anything, and it becomes almost a therapy session with a 3-year-old. You're outing self to not know. And then at some point in time, it's just like, stop. And he exaggerates in a Louis C.K. sort of way. And on some fundamental level, if we are sincere, like deeply sincere, not just get the project done because we're educated or because we've called to be part of that project, if we're truly sincere about creating the conditions so that a young person may navigate complexity and be agile and deal with whatever sort of concoction of 21st century skills they might need, if we are spending the bulk of our shared relationship being increasingly pissed off because we think we're the point of that rhetorical dialogue, that our knowledge is at risk, we have to shut it down. We have to, like a good factory owner in the late 1800s, we got to create efficiencies, which did propel us to the point where Elon can mock the elders of a previous. But in this day and age, we don't need our colleagues, our workers, our spouses, our VCs and benefactors to be told to shut up or to feel like our insights are at risk if they ask why. And everyone that's been up here today has explored much more significantly than I am right now some version of that productive tension. If we are sincere about creating the conditions so people can thrive, can learn, can produce, can create, can not know, we can't be affected by our role in that story. We must be all in, because if they're asking why, that's who we want to partner with. The last group of kiddos that I'm really struck by,
Why can't we go outside?
are these little buggers. And again, the same filters. I don't know shit. And I can't help but want to figure out what they're figuring out. There are little kiddos at a school called Forest Kids in Nova Scotia, but there are several around the world. Every minute of every day of school, rain, sun, bluster, sleet, they're outdoors. Their elders are in the room, so to speak. They're just not interfering with those young people. This could be adorable and cute and quaint, and it's exactly why we want Montessori for everybody. And that may not be the reason to care, because kids are cute, but we don't, that's low table stakes. Being the adult and not crossing that fourth part of the stage, not wanting to guide, not taking credit for which part of the why they're allowed to pursue, takes balls. To be the educator that knows we got plenty of time to get down that road. They don't need it all yet. However, what I'm really interested in as a designer and somebody who gets to work with communities who want to understand that moment like Elon, that's where we're going next, is how do we not create the conditions for the kiddos, because that looks a lot like a playground that doesn't feel like a forest almost every time we build it. Whether it's curriculum, a textbook, or quite literally a space outside the gym, it never looks like the forest because we want the one we can measure and manage. But the real challenge, those kids don't need us to design the playground. They need us not to find them adorable, not to say, not to quickly get the shot and write the blog post about them being cute, and not to design the playground. They need us to ponder what's in the puddle. They need us amongst each other to be madly curious with no more skin in the game than they are now. I don't know much, but I'm curious about that. This is the rapid fires part. So if this is the case, a wonderful book that I'm wrestling with right now by Warren Berger. And on some level, it's kind of like, if we're really serious about brainstorming, how do we do that? And the key is not to brainstorm, but to ask more and more questions, like deeply and forever, without apology. I'm really struck by two little facts in there that I don't know if they're true, although I've read in the bibliography in the appendix, so I know it came from something. The average child between the ages of 2 and 5 asks 40,000 questions. The average child who's 4 years old is actually a female in Britain, so it skews towards gender and location, but it's a good one when it's without all that context. Asks 400 questions a day. Alison Gopnik, a child psychologist in a completely different part of the book, said that children are the R&D specialists of the human race. That sounds like a great bumper sticker and t-shirt. The truth is we don't know what to do with that. It's in hindsight we find that true. But this is where it becomes more compelling. Later in the book, they talk about Watson and how Watson's becoming a smarter computer, not by virtue of what he's knowing, the operating system of Watson. He's actually pushing the researchers to ask better questions. There's a virtuous cycle between Watson and the scientists. It isn't that Watson's replacing us. Watson isn't becoming a better question asker. He's helping human beings become better question askers. But what I love about this is to the point where they become like kids in puddles. To the point where it is our ace in the hole. But I don't actually care about that. I don't care about solving the grand equations of life and taking on the big ones. I'm interested in this part. This is from the most preeminent group of sort of education researchers researching about stats in education. So geeks about geeks about geeks in education. What's really fascinating is between the ages of 3 and 5, it becomes a cliff in terms of children asking questions, meaning their trajectory, their natural disposition, their default setting, their OS, is to ask questions. And then between the ages of 3 to 4 to 5, they drop. It doesn't take a genius to know what roughly begins about that time. If we become curious and why is it good data, we've already lost the point. I'm curious about how we create the conditions, not just for reading and writing to improve, because maybe, but how do we stay evergreen in our ability to go, I'm curious, why? Because if they're not, how the hell are we? And the truth is, we all succeeded in this. So it isn't just get them all to us. How do we, with our biases, wrestle with this? Probably at the end of the day, this is ultimately the question. And I don't think the design question is, we'll give them more books that are playful and graphic designed. Give them more playgrounds. Give them more chances to be fanciful. This question doesn't need a solution. It needs a love affair. It needs us to be madly curious, like the children, on behalf of the children, and forget them. Why do they stop doesn't necessitate an ending or a solution. It simply says, that's interesting, and let's linger there a little